These videos are meant to be descriptive of individual ethnic stories. They're not meant to be prescriptive or to say, if you're Asian, you need to resonate with every single Asian story, or that the videos are supposed to summarize all of the Black experience, or the white experience, or Native or Latino, because a video can't do that all. These stories are supposed to help you reflect on your own ethnic journey, and sometimes it will be the story of someone who doesn't look like you that really resonates. So be open to deepening your own story as you learn in community. What's your ethnic background?
I'm Black.
I am South Asian American, specifically Malayali.
I'm white. I have a montage of different ancestries: German, Scottish, Irish, English, and Armenian.
I am Puerto Rican, Italian, and Polish.
Each of us has an ethnic background that was created for good. In Genesis, we see that God creates humankind in His image, and He tells them to be fruitful and multiply and spread out over the earth. As they do so, you start to see different culturally distinct expressions of music, of tent dwelling, and hunting. You start to see culturally distinct different groups of people. When we hear each other's ethnic stories and backgrounds, we start to move away from assumptions and stereotypes. We start to really see each other, not in spite of our ethnicity, but in our ethnicity. What you end up with is the opposite of colorblindness. You become ethnicity aware.
I remember going to a track meet when I was in middle school, and when I went to the concession stand, I realized that everyone who was around me was Black. And as far as I could see, there were no other white people there. And in that moment, I realized that I was different than those people who I was with, and more so than just my physical appearance. I think that was the first time I realized that I was white, and I became very aware of my whiteness.
My grandparents on my mom's side, I would experience straightforward communication. We would eat Polish food, kielbasa, sauerkraut, pierogies, and they would help me calculate my weekly allowance. And I would overhear them talking about, why are people late, and just the confusion surrounding that. And on my dad's side, I would visit his aunt and uncle, mamita and papito, trying to figure out how to communicate with them because I didn't speak Spanish and they didn't speak English. Through story and using hand gestures and just the abundance of food, and papito being so happy to share the limbe de coco every time I came over to visit.
Growing up, I knew I was Native American, Wyandot and Cherokee, but it wasn't something most other people knew about me. It just didn't come up. My parents and I all appear white, and we are white mostly, Irish and Scottish. In fact, I don't remember knowing anyone else personally who was Native besides family.
My dad taught us that assimilation was the way to success. I didn't know about our Ghanaian heritage until I was 9 years old.
As a child, I remember being really curious about events in our history, like slavery or the civil rights movement. But every time I would try to bring it up with my grandparents, it was really difficult to keep the conversation alive. My family wasn't exactly silent about these topics, but we were definitely quiet about them. I learned early on not to talk about race if I didn't want the conversation to get awkward.
When I grew up, I knew that I was Lakota, and I knew that I was different from everybody else. There were us, the Native Americans, and then there was everybody else. But that did not mean that I was not interested in everybody else. And I set myself to learn everything that I could with all the means at my disposal, books, magazines, the internet, all that, to learn about what the world had and what it had to offer.
These ethnic backgrounds have values and expressions that are beautiful. When we say beautiful, we're not talking about human, often conflicting and shallow notions of beauty. Instead, we're talking about the beautiful aspects of our cultures that express hospitality towards the other and stewardship of who we are, the way God designed us to be when He first made us in community. All of our cultures have things that are distinctly beautiful, and they are passed down through family stories and practices, common language, and celebration.
Filipinos are all about community and fun and celebration. If you ever get a group of Filipinos together, even if they don't know each other, you can be guaranteed that the atmosphere will soon be filled with laughter and fun. It seems like Filipinos are always partying.
When I was growing up, I wondered how many brothers and sisters my dad actually had, and that was really confusing. But what I would come to learn is that in our culture, there's a value of family, connection, and respect. So everyone older than you, whether it was 6 months or 10 years older than you, was considered your aunt or your uncle.
When I was in 3rd grade, my mom had a big birthday party for me. She invited every single person in my classroom. My peers thought that was a little strange because they'd never experienced a co-ed birthday party before, but for my family, it was just an indication of our desire to celebrate todos juntos en familia. So everyone was welcomed to this party.
I was born in Arizona, but was raised mostly in South Dakota by my very large, my very warm, my very vocal Lakota family. And there's a Lakota phrase that really describes it, which is mitakuye oyasin, which means we are all related.
I grew up being taught black is beautiful. There's so many wonderful things about our culture. The soul food, the clothes, the music, our creativity, our ingenuity. Black is beautiful. I absolutely love my ethnicity.
My family has been Christian for generations and generations. We're community oriented, and especially in the Multiethnic community, we love to laugh. We love to joke. It's pretty common for us to make fun of each other, but joy just overflows when we come together.
Contrary to what we hear, white Americans also have cultural distinctives, affected by their ethnic heritage, the distance or years from when their family first immigrated to the States, as well as the part of the US that they're from, like the South or the Midwest.
I'm from a rural farming community where people have high values for hard work and community involvement. Many people have stories about their great-great-great-grandparents who came over to the US from Europe with nothing but the shirts on their back or something like that, and how through sacrifice and hard work, they were able to start a new life here and make something for themselves and their families.
My family taught me personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility, and self-discipline. We were freely encouraged to be innovative, to create, and to freely imagine what our lives could look like in the world.
As we interact with more people of different ethnicities, we start to really appreciate the beautiful things in their different cultures. And we're not talking about like a shallow level, like, oh, I eat like Chinese takeout, or I eat tacos and that makes me an expert or a know-it-all. Or buying into stereotypes from afar and never really talking to someone. You end up with more experiences that help you counter the lie that ethnicity doesn't matter or that a people are inferior or superior to others.
I'm a 3rd generation Chinese American from New York. My grandparents immigrated over from China through Ellis Island. My grandparents worked hard in the dry cleaning business and as seamstresses in Chinatown sweatshops. And as many immigrants do, they worked countless hours in order to see their children live the American dream.
One summer, my younger cousin was in the hospital, and for every day during the few months that he was there were about 15 to 20 of us that would fill the hospital cafeteria. We would bring food and we would bring games, and we would just laugh and eat together just to help keep the spirits up. Even after a while, the janitors and the nurses would come join us for our potlucks.
Growing up, there was a strong sense of family, and it was constantly growing. Family included anybody willing to share in our story. So I grew up with a lot of aunts and uncles who weren't even blood.
My junior year of college, I was hired by my alma mater to be part of a team of 11 black students and 3 white students. Me and my black friend were talking about movies, and my boss comes up and shares about her favorite movie being The Breakfast Club. My friend says, "Oh, I don't like that movie." And I turn to him, because I've never heard anyone say that, "Hey, why don't you like that movie?" And he looks at me and he says, "Because there's no minorities in it for me to relate to." I was shocked, because I had been blind to how that movie and so many other things were catering to my people, white people. I asked Jesus to remove my blinders so that I could see.
Our series doesn't end here. It begins here. And we can't stay here because each of our ethnic backgrounds have scars and wounds that need healing from Jesus. But first, let's start by talking about how we were made for good.